The JSC interviews to fill Constitutional Court posts concluded yesterday with 4 candidates being shortlisted. They are Judge Fayeeza Kathree Setiloane, Advocate Alan Dodson, Judge Mahube Molemela, and Judge Owen. They all made the cut. But according to Section 174 of the Constitution, the JSC must actually give the President 3 more names than there are vacancies. This obviously didn't happen in this case. Let's get a sense of what the implications are. Bring in Judges Matter researcher Mbekezeli Benjamin, who's live to us via our video link. It's great to see you as always, especially when we try ventilate these legal issues. Thanks very much indeed for your time, Mbekezeli. So, I mean, I guess that is the talking point as of this morning, right? So there are 2 vacancies. We expected 5 recommendations to be put forward. Only 4 were. This is all contained in Section 174 of the Constitution. My question, I guess, is in what ways is President Cyril Ramaphosa now hamstrung in trying to fill these 2 vacancies?
Good morning, and to the viewers at home. Well, at this point, President Ramaphosa can only fill 1 of the 2 vacancies. The other vacancy will be left open. And that is because the JSC only recommended 4 names. And as you said, Section 174 of the Constitution says that there must be 3 more names than the vacancies. So if you're filling 2 vacancies, you need 5 names. For 1 vacancy, you need 4 names. And what this means now is that the JSC must give a reason why they haven't filled the other vacancy. And in terms of the law, in terms of the Cape Bar Council case, that reason must be a substantial reason. So they must say that we found the 5th candidate completely unsuitable to be put forward for the Constitutional Court, and it's not a low standard to meet. So we will hear later around lunchtime when the spokespersons for the JSC give the reasons why the JSC decided to go about this way.
We also hear from the Constitution, I beg your pardon, I think it's Section 4C, that the JSC must also supplement this with a list of further nominees to the President, and then the President himself will make appointments from the supplemented list. Help us understand where that fits into this process and whether or not there can be an expectation from the JSC to give some kind of supplemented list moving forward.
So the supplemented list only happens when the President rejects the names that the JSC has put forward.
Right.
So if with the 4 names that have been put forward to President Ramaphosa, he says, no, this is not enough for me to fill the vacancy, he can send that list back to the JSC, and then the JSC has to put in additional names on the list so that the President can fill the vacancy. But that is an exceptional circumstance, and it has never happened before in the history of our country.
Yeah, and we've had many unprecedented moments unfolding, so perhaps we shouldn't hold our breath, right? I wonder, though, what the implication would be for that, because, I mean, if I understood you correctly, the supplemented list would be necessitated if the President can't fill all the vacancies. There are only 4 names. We needed 5. That suggests to us that he is in that position, and so do you reckon it's a foregone conclusion that he could ask for the supplemented list?
It's not a foregone conclusion at all. The President is not necessarily required to fill the 2 vacancies. Remember, it is the JSC that initiates the process and then gives the names to the President, and then he just signs off on the names. Now, the supplementary list only comes in if the President rejects the list that has already been given to him. So right now, the JSC itself decided not to fill the 2nd vacancy. So let's put that aside for now. So there's only 1 vacancy to be filled by the President using the 4 names that he has now been given. If he says the 4 names that I've been given are not suitable to fill that 1 vacancy, then he can send it back to the JSC for the JSC to add names to that list, and then he can fill that 1 vacancy. So the 2nd vacancy for now is out of the question. There's only 1 that the President needs to fill, and that is a decision that the JSC has taken, which, like I said, they will only explain a little later today. But I think the other important aspect of this is that the 1 name that the JSC has decided to leave out is that of Judge David Unterhalter.
Yeah.
And many people have been saying that he is suitable for appointment to the to the Constitutional Court. And yesterday's interviews, it seemed as if the JSC had already taken, well, at least some members of the JSC had taken quite a strong stance against him. So it would be interesting to find out what exactly the reasons they've put forward for leaving his name off the list and deciding not to fill the second vacancy.
And of course, there's all kinds of speculations around that reason, right? One of the reasons that people are suggesting is perhaps legitimate, is that, you know, when he was asked questions about whether or not sitting on a case in the SCA that finally makes it to the Constitutional Court should be permissible for a single judge. In other words, if I am Judge Ayanda and I have dismissed an appeal at the SCA, does it make constitutional sense, or is it legitimate for me to also sit in that particular case within the Constitutional Court? His response was no, that judge should recuse themselves. But then it turned out that he didn't do that. When he found himself in that situation, to what extent do you reckon that actually really played against him?
I think that is one of the strongest reasons that the JSC can put forward for saying that he was not suitable for appointment. But I think there is, and it is a serious thing, right? Judges should never sit on appeals that they've decided themselves. So that is a big no-no in terms of the law, in terms of judicial ethics. But in this particular situation, there was a context to it. He says, look, I omitted the thing, I made that mistake simply because I didn't realize that this is a case that had come before me in the SCA. And he also explained that there were about 10 other justices who also were dealing with the case, including their law clerks. So at least 33 people omitted this error. And he said, look, I accept that it was a mistake that was committed, and I'll take responsibility for it. So there is a wider context. And because of that wider context, it can be complicated to say that it is a legitimate reason in terms of the law for excluding him. But like I said, it is not a small thing that can be dismissed entirely.
Yeah, I mean, so if I understand you correctly, the culpability around who's to blame here can be shared, if I'm understanding you correctly, right?
Yes, it can, and because the culpability can be shared, then it sort of makes it a little bit more complicated for the JSC to say we excluded him because of this reason. But I think there were other questions during the interview process where there was some, I think, tension in the room, one of which was on the list that he had provided to the JSC of the black advocates that he had supported, particularly the black women advocates. There were at many points during the interview where he was asked about the accuracy of that list. He had included a name that of a person that he had not in fact worked with, but also there was a question about the types of candidates that he had worked with. One of the commissioners put it to him that the people that he had worked with, he had only started working with 2 years before he became a judge. And remember, at that time, he had already been an advocate for more than 25 years, and he was dealing with some of the biggest cases in the country.
Sure. Before I let you go, Benjamin, there's also, Mbekezeli, there's also been questions, of course, or discussions around this being a new kind of JSC. Several names have been not excluded, but, people's terms have lapsed, and there's almost a different feel, some would say, to the way the JSC conducts these interviews. From your reading of how developments unfolded yesterday, would you agree with that?
Yes, it's still a little bit too early to tell because we're only on day 1 of 4, so we don't know how the rest of the week will unfold. But there certainly are positive signs that we're seeing. The most important thing is that the JSC has now committed itself to some sort of written criteria, which is important. The second aspect is that Chief Justice Zondo emphasized at many, many points that there must be respect, there must be dignity, there must be a decorum in the room when they were interviewing. And I think we saw a lot of that during the course of the day. There were, like I said, tensions towards the end of the interviews, and there was a procedural misstep by the JSC in terms of the information that was brought before the candidates. But overall, I think we are seeing a new JSC come to form.
Fascinating developments nonetheless. Thank you very much indeed for helping us connect the dots and for breaking it all down for us. Lovely chatting to you.